Well, 2013 was most certainly a bounce back year of good order for the New Orleans Saints, to say the very least. You had all the disaster that was 2012, had coach being suspended for the season, the cloud of Bountygate hanging over the organization. It just didn't go that well. I was surprised, frankly, that they finished as well as they did. I was curious to see how they were going to respond in 2013, and respond they did in a big way. They ended up finishing 11-5 for most of the season. It looked like they were going to be the team that would win the NFC South before the Carolina Panthers ended up nipping them at the heels and being able to do it. But the New Orleans Saints, 11-5, they make it to the wild card round of the playoffs. They win a road playoff game in Philadelphia, and they go to Seattle and played Seattle relatively tough before ultimately losing in the divisional round. A really good bounce back season for the New Orleans Saints. So I imagine expectations are pretty high among Saints fans and the organization, and probably some in the NFL media. To which I say, I could see that, but I don't know if I fully agree. Now, looking at this offseason, I think it was important for the Saints to know that they had a big improvement, in large part, I think, due to the job that Ryan did with that defense, because that defense was night and day different between 2012 and 2013. But they were a long way from truly being a championship team, a team that could really contend with the Seattles and the San Franciscos of the NFC. So they went about this offseason trying to add some pieces, and I was surprised, frankly, that they didn't add more. They weren't in the best way in terms of their salary cap position, and they also had to sit there and work out a long-term deal with Jimmy Graham, which thankfully for all parties involved, that ultimately happened. But they did make a big move in free agency, signing Jairus Byrd away from the Buffalo Bills. Now you pair him with Kenny Vaccaro, and you've got one of the best young safety tandems in the National Football League. They bring in a veteran presence like Champ Bailey, who, while he has declined as a player, might be a contributor for the Saints in 2014. I really like the first-round pick of Brandon Cooks for the Saints organization. Stanley Jean-Baptiste in the second round, a big physical corner in the mold of a Richard Sherman. They had some nice additions. In terms of their losses, you look at some of the names and you say guys like Will Smith and Roman Harper, Jabari Greer, Malcolm Jenkins, Lance Moore, Darren Sproles. And you would say that they lost a lot. And I kind of dispute that. I don't know how much they really actually lost this offseason. I think the biggest loss for them was Darren Sproles, trading him away like they did to Philadelphia. That was a bit of a puzzling move to me. That was a bit of a head-scratcher, and I wasn't sure if it was completely necessary. I think that's the one loss from this offseason that the New Orleans Saints will struggle to cope with and struggle to deal with all throughout the 2014 season. Now, looking ahead to 2014, what are some of the strengths of this team? Well, number one, Drew Brees. Let's be perfectly honest here. You got Drew Brees. You got one of the true elite quarterbacks in the National Football League. You have a guy who is without a shadow of a doubt a first ballot Hall of Famer. That is the strength of your teams. You have a guy like him, and the Broncos have Manning, the Patriots have Brady, the freaking Packers have Rodgers, and 28 other teams wish they had one of those four quarterbacks. So you automatically, from the jump, have one huge advantage over the majority of the teams in the National Football League. I also look at this team, and I like the depth that they have on offense. I'm talking about specifically the wide receiving core and the running back position. Yes, they lost Darren Sproles, but they've still got some players at running back, so I think they've got a nice rotation there with Ingram and Thomas and Robinson. They've got a 1-2-3 tandem, all guys that can be productive at different points in different ways. Their wide receiving core, yes, they lost Lance Moore, but frankly, he was always a bit of a dick tease, and he was always a guy that seemed to find a way to be hurt. One game he'd be on, the next game he wouldn't be anywhere. You've still got Colston, you've got Robert Meacham. Now you bring first-round pick Brandon Cooks into the fold, who I think is going to be a very, very valued weapon for Drew Brees and that Saints passing attack right from week number one in his rookie season. Now, I also look at the secondary, too. You're bringing in guys like Jairus Byrd. You've got Kenny Vaccaro in there. That's a hell of a safety tandem, and that can make up for a lot of mistakes, both in the running game by your front seven and in the passing game with your corners. Like I said, Vaccaro, Byrd, that's a big-time strength for this football team and for this Rob Ryan defense. Now, looking at the question marks for this team, I look at the linebacking core. This is a team running the 3-4 defense, and I'm not sure if they've got that elite edge rusher or that consistent outside pass rush that you need to really truly have a dominant 3-4 defensive unit. I also look at their offensive line. You've got Teron Armstead, I'm assuming, is going to start at left tackle this year. You've got Ben Grubbs at left guard, Zach Strief still at right tackle. This is not a world-beating offensive line, and one thing they've struggled to do over the past couple of years, even though I think they were a little better in 2013 than they were in 2012, was to consistently protect Drew Brees. That's why Drew Brees a lot of times was getting rid of the ball so quickly, because he didn't have a choice, because he was under constant siege. And it'll be interesting to me to see how this offensive line gels and plays together this upcoming season. And then I look at their lack of a true kind of bell cow number one running back. The problem for the Saints, to me, in some ways, is that they have all of these running backs, but they really don't have one running back. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you or not, but I think their leading rusher last year might have been Mark Ingram, and he had something like 580 yards. You need more out of the running back position than what they got. And, Darren Sproles is gone, so that's another piece that's out of the picture. But, between Mark Ingram and a Pierre Thomas and or Kyrie Robinson, you've got three guys that can all do things, but none of them ever really become the identity of the Saints' ground game. And none of them, I think, ever produce at a consistent level that the Saints sometimes, frankly, need, because I think sometimes they can get a little too pass-happy and they can get a little too one-dimensional, which can cost them big in some big-time games, and it seems to every year. Now, looking ahead to 2014 at their schedule, just like the rest of the NFC South, they got to play the AFC North and they got to play the NFC North. And then the Saints get Dallas and San Francisco in their two NFC conference games. You look at weeks 10 through 12, they've got three what look like really tough opponents, and somehow the New Orleans Saints, I don't know if it's just because the league loves them so much or what the hell it is, just the luck of the draw. They got San Francisco, Cincinnati, and Baltimore, and you might say, well, that's not a great stretch of schedule, except all three of those teams have to come into the Mercedes-Benz Superdome and play the Saints at home. Weeks 10, 11, and 12. So if the Saints are sitting there and they're in contention in the NFC South, and then weeks 10 through 12 happen, and they somehow find a way to beat a San Francisco and beat either a Cincinnati or Baltimore, God forbid, beat both of them, or they lose to San Francisco, beat Cincinnati and Baltimore, they go 2-1 or 3-0 in that stretch. You're talking about a Saints team that could be potentially positioning themselves to get a first-round bye in the 2014 NFC playoffs. It's possible. I mean, to get that stretch of games right there and get all three of those games at home is a very advantageous thing for the New Orleans Saints, because as we all know, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome is a very tough place to play. Looking at the keys to success for New Orleans in 2014, I think they need more consistency from the running game. I think they need to stop being so pass-happy, which is easy to do when you have guys like Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham, Marcus Colston, your first-round pick, Brandon Cooks. I understand. You could move the ball down the field a lot. You can score a lot through the air and solely through the air. But in order to become a better team and a more well-balanced offense and perhaps a championship offense, the New Orleans Saints need somebody, whether that's Ingram, Thomas, Robinson, they need somebody to kind of take the reins and be that lead back. And the Saints, Sean Payton and his offensive staff need to sit there and try and establish the run more consistently, not just do it to do it, but really try to provide some balance and really keep teams guessing, because if you can establish a more consistent threat in the running game and bring another dimension to your offense, how the hell are opposing defenses going to guard Jimmy Graham and Colston and Cooks and Drew Brees' accuracy and decision-making when they got to worry about the running game too? The offensive line is going to have to play well. They're going to have to keep Drew Brees upright. They're going to have to do a better job of blocking in the run game. And I think the Saints are going to need more pass rush than they got last year from the front seven. Cameron Jordan is a stud, but he's one player. They need more out of their outside linebackers. I'm not saying they were boo-boo in 2013, but ultimately for that defense to be successful long-term, it's going to need more pass rush on the outside from those backers in the 3-4. Looking at the Saints in 2014, I still think they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team. I don't sit here and say that they'll get a lot worse. I don't think that'll be the case. But I don't think they'll be as good as last season. I think they'll end up going 9-7 and be second in the NFC South with a chance maybe to sneak into the wild card round of the playoffs in the NFC. That's not an attempt to diss the New Orleans Saints, but I also look at the history of this division too, and there's almost every year, it seems like in the NFC South, there is dramatic upheaval and, changing of placing and positioning within the division, and I just don't envision, the New Orleans Saints staying in the same place, winning the same number of games as last season, basically, is what I'm saying. So 9-7 winning record, maybe a chance at sneaking into the wild card, but I don't think they'll be the best team in the NFC South come 2014.